like you said, my name is Chris Crocker. I'm an area engineer for MoDOT. I've been with MoDOT for about 14 years now. In the last couple of years, I've been the area engineer for the Southeast District. Uh, so that's right in the heart of where the path of totality is going to be hitting the state of Missouri. And we've been talking about the eclipse for what feels like a very long time right now, which it has been. We've been talking about it for at least since the last one in 2017, and how we're going to prepare for the next eclipse in 2024. But it's finally about here, so we're all really excited, and we have done a lot of planning and preparation to kind of hopefully help things go as smoothly as possible. Before I get too much into the presentation, I did want to show a video, and if you've seen this before, I do apologize. But I was searching through the internet the other day looking for some videos, and I thought this was a really good demonstration or representation of what we're planning for the worst but hoping for the best. So this is in Wyoming, and what it is all the traffic that is leaving the state of Colorado from the 2017 eclipse heading in there. And what you'll notice is during the morning that traffic's pretty heavy, but it only lasts for about 4 hours or so. But the key takeaway that I noticed from this is once the eclipse was over, if you notice that traffic coming back into the state of Colorado is really, really heavy, probably worst case scenario, and lasts for several hours. It looked like about 10 hours, at least on that video there alone. So fortunately, from what I remember, at least in my district, maybe not the entire state of Missouri, but what I remember from my district was that we really didn't see a lot of those big traffic backups like we were anticipating in 2017. I attribute that to good planning, and then maybe also a bit of good luck as well. But other parts of our state, like in the northwest portion of the state, maybe some of the bad cloud cover and those sorts of things had visitors commuting from one area to the other. So I think there were some backups, but nothing really like what you saw in that video in Colorado just now. And then I think some of our rest areas down in my area, folks were trying to get off the highway and view them. So those did fill up pretty quick. But we know that now going into it and how we plan on tackling that. But I think what's important for myself and others in preparing for this event is just kind of wrapping your head around how big of a deal it actually is and the magnitude of the event. So it's really just more, it's a whole lot more than just a few minutes of total darkness. If anything we learned from 2017 is that there were some states that were heavily impacted from commuters coming outside and visitors coming from outside the state. And we're just trying to be prepared for that because this one's a little bit different than the solar eclipse in 2017. And then it also is going to have its own unique set of challenges as well. So there's a big potential for massive traffic impacts to our system. The 2024 path of totality, it ranges across the United States, and there's 32 million people that already live within the path itself. There's also several metro areas. One of those that we're really focused on is St. Louis, others including Cincinnati, Detroit, Quebec. They're also very close and could possibly be something that other states have to deal with for those other big metro areas. But we're really focused on St. Louis and Kansas City for the most part. But there is always that possibility that we might see a big influx of traffic coming from outside the state. I found this map, which I thought was really interesting, off the greatamericaneclipse.com website. And basically, they went through and mapped the shortest drive to the path of totality throughout the entire U.S. And they have projected numbers anywhere from as low as 43,000 additional visitors to the state of Missouri, and then as high as 173,000 additional visitors to the state of Missouri. You can see that a little bit more focused in on this next slide from that same website. But one thing that I did want to point out is if you notice right here, this big, thick blue line across the state of Missouri, that really grabbed my attention when I was looking at this map, and the fact that it connects Kansas City and St. Louis and appears to be a funneling network of roadways to the Southeast District where we currently are working out of right now. So we're really anticipating that I-70, I-55, US 67, all of those 4-lane facilities are going to be really heavily impacted. So we're taking a lot of precautions right now to kind of reduce those impacts, and anything that we can do to make that process easier for our customers and our visitors, we're looking into that right now. You've probably all seen these paths of totality. I just wanted to kind of show this in the presentation just to get a representation of how many actual minutes that the boot hill will experience of totality. And here's kind of a more honed in version on that. If you see in Poplar Bluff and Cape Girardeau, they're going to be experiencing the most in the boot hill. And so we're kind of anticipating that that's where the majority of our visitors and out-of-state folks, and maybe even some of the in-state St. Louis and Kansas City people are going to be commuting to. But if you also notice, there's 2 minutes on the outermost part of the totality map as well. So that's almost similar to the 2017 Eclipse as far as the length of totality. So it's kind of neat to point out that there's going to be a whole additional 2 more minutes of the eclipse being blocked out. So some of the things that we've been doing to prepare for this is collaborating with other agencies. We've been meeting monthly on a call with our partner agencies, including adjacent states, our own internal MoDOT staff, law enforcement partners, such as the State Highway Patrol, even the Department of Homeland Security, because we are worried about maybe some of those risks also with having these large gatherings. Other state emergency management agencies, SEMA, we're actually going to have those that activated the day of the eclipse because it is such a large scale event. And then we've been working with a lot of tourism groups and even the Department of Conservation to try and determine where we might see the most impacts at. Like I'd said before, we are trying to monitor the big events throughout our district. We've been working with many cities and counties and their Chamber of Commerce to identify locations where we are going to be having bigger gatherings. We also have the CMO campus down in Cape Girardeau, where there's going to be several big gatherings there as well. And we're trying to put those all on some sort of map to be able to determine, if what the expectation might be as far as where motorists are going to be traveling to and from the weekend of the eclipse, and then leading up to it, and especially leaving after the eclipse. The good thing that we've really noticed is that your cities like Perryville, Cape Girardeau, Poplar Bluff, they're having several large events. And then also a lot of the smaller communities outside of those areas like Marquand, Farmington, and some other ones, they're having their own events as well. So the good thing about that is that it's spreading it out throughout the entire district versus having it in one localized area, which should help with some congestion, pending we don't get any bad weather or anything like that to shift things. We've also been looking at all the campgrounds that we have in our area. We have a lot of national parks, Department of Conservation campgrounds, and even state parks that people are reserving campsites. And those will most likely be full the weekend and the day of the event. So we've been doing our best to communicate to motorists and visitors what drivers need to know. Um, I, I think it's obvious to say that they need to expect heavy traffic leading into and out of areas, especially after the eclipse. Kind of related, very similar to Kansas City Chiefs football game or a St. Louis Cardinals game, where everybody might be arriving at different times. You know, some are early, some are right on time, and maybe some are a little late. But when that ball game lets out, everybody pretty well disperses at the same time, and that's what we don't want to happen after the eclipse, is because that's when we kind of anticipate the biggest traffic jams, similar to the video that I showed earlier. So we've been doing our best to communicate that on our website and on our Facebook page. We highly encourage everybody to make a plan to go see, not only see the eclipse, but also make a plan to have like a backup plan in case the weather is bad, or if you do get stuck in traffic, that you have plenty of water and maybe some non-perishable snacks like granola bars and plenty of gas, so that you aren't stranded out there on the highway. And then always stay after to avoid the extra traffic. That is, again, that's the number one thing that we're preaching. So predicting the impacts, again, we're predicting that there is going to be some worst case scenario. We do have some congestion more towards like the I-55 area, I-70, where all that traffic tends to bottleneck from maybe neighboring states or even the Kansas City, St. Louis area. We've identified, again, many major events that are happening and where the path of totality is going to be at, so that we can monitor those areas. And if there is more congestion, we can react to it. In the event of a traffic incident, whether it's on the interstate or one of our secondary routes, we've been working with our internal groups to identify bypass routes, so that EMS services and our maintenance and staff can respond to those incidents, because the last thing we want is for somebody to get into an accident and not be able to get emergency services to them. I saw a pretty neat idea on a webinar the other day of some states are even utilizing a lot of UTVs as well on the interstates, just in case they can't get their normal vehicles through. And their emergency services folks are using UTVs to be able to get to those incidents. We will be monitoring the weather with the National Weather Service, so that if there's, you know, let's say hypothetically there's clouds in Poplar Bluff, but there's not in the Farmington or Fredericktown area, we can anticipate that Highway 67 is going to be pretty heavily traveled for some folks that are going to commute to those areas. We're not encouraging that, we're just anticipating it. And also, we're planning for communication system failures. There's going to be a lot of visitors in one particular area, so there's always that chance that your cell phone service or coverage doesn't work as well. So our staff will have the proper CBs and those sorts of things to be able to communicate in the event that those failures happen. And then we're also, again, working with the Department of Homeland Security and trying to come up with how to mitigate soft target attacks for these large gatherings. This is kind of more of what I just went over, but as far as traffic modeling goes, we've got an idea of where we expect to have the heavier traffic coming into our certain cities like Perryville and Cape Girardeau along I-55. We do have the ability to go into our traffic signals and update kind of change the timing to maybe give more time to any particular traffic movement that is heavier. We can do that on the fly as well. We do have our CCTV cameras to be able to do that. We also are working to pre-stage a lot of traffic control out in areas that we anticipate that there's a likelihood that we might, if we left everything at the nearest shed, we may not be able to respond to an incident or a need for that traffic control to be there. So we're pre-staging a lot of traffic control and our CMS boards. And again, working on bypass routes to identify if there was an accident, which route that our emergency medical services, and how we would detour traffic and those sorts of things. We are restricting parking, especially on the shoulders. It's not something that we would recommend anytime, let alone when there's this amount of increased traffic. So we're going to do our best to communicate that through digital message signs and our media posts that we are discouraging that, and it is against the law to park on shoulders to view the Eclipse itself. We're also working with our permit department to not permit any super loads the weekend or the day of the event, and we will be allowing general permits, but they're not overweight or over dimension. So we're hoping that will help with traffic as well. And then all of our construction projects that we actively have going on, we're doing our best to mitigate that as well by having job special provisions included in the contract that restrict the contractor from working on those days leading up to and during the eclipse itself. We give them extra time at the end of the contract if it's needed, but we don't want any more traffic out there slowing things down. And we also don't want a contractor waiting on a load of concrete for a bridge deck pour and it gets stuck in traffic and then the bridge not be able to be successfully poured. So I think I've already said this a couple of times, but we're doing our best to inform our drivers and visitors the importance of not stopping on the interstate or the shoulders. We can't really enforce that. We can just do our best to communicate that to them that it's not a good idea. Exiting the highway to take any photographs is always a key point that we're trying to put out there. And then also, I think this goes without saying, but not trying to photograph while you're driving. Something that not everybody would think of is that you need to have your headlights turned on and not on auto, because when the solar eclipse starts going and your auto features may not recognize that. So it's important to turn those on versus rely on the auto feature. And then within the cities and urban areas, we are encouraging motorists to drive slower and watch out for pedestrians as they're maybe going to and from these large gathering and events, and prepare for congestion. So again, have water, snacks, plenty of gas, and those sorts of things in your vehicle in the event you are held up in traffic. This is another one that I think goes without saying, but it's kind of like the advisory warning on the back of a shampoo bottle. You read that and it says, do not ingest. And you think, why in the world is that on there? It's because somebody out there probably just didn't really think about it. And I think this is the same concept: is don't wear your Eclipse glasses while driving. We're communicating that to motorists as well, because it's not a good idea, but we can't just assume that they know that. So during the event, we are overstaffing our customer service department so that we can handle the influx of calls if there are any. We are also permitting additional overtime during and after the event if needed. And then we are kind of treating our maintenance staff and crews as treating it like a snow event, so that they're kind of sitting by ready to go. And we've got crews and equipment pre-staged at certain locations throughout the district in order to respond to any needs during the event. We will activate any bypass routes that we have planned depending on where we have congestion or accidents. And then our motorist assist will be out trying to assist any of the stranded motorists that maybe do run out of gas or those sorts of things. Leading up to the eclipse itself, we will be putting our digital message signs and digital message boards throughout the district, kind of around about where those locations are at that we've identified as heavier corridors that we expect to have heavier volumes of traffic on. And those messages will read the same information that I've said during this presentation, basically reiterating, solar eclipse, no parking on the highway, solar eclipse, headlights on, solar eclipse, no pictures while driving, and those sorts of things, just to kind of reiterate all the key tips and tricks that we've been putting out there for the public. And then the day of messages will most likely have the same information on it, unless there are changes in traffic where we're seeing backups, delays, and those sorts of things. And we'll be able to remote into those message boards and change those messages on the fly on most of our boards that we have if needed. After the event, we will be monitoring our CCTV and ITS devices. So those cameras that you see out at interchanges, intersections, we'll be monitoring those for backups. That will enable us to identify any areas that our traffic department needs to remote into and kind of change the signal timing so that traffic can flow as best as possible. We will also be utilizing our safety service patrols and adjusting those DMS signs as needed. So for more information about the Eclipse coming up and MoDOT's tips and tricks that we have, you can go to our social media platforms and follow MoDOT on Facebook or on our website, and you'll get that information. We'll be putting that out weekly until the event. And if you remember anything from this, is to arrive early, stay put, and leave late. And then, as always, if you're going around the state of Missouri, you can jump on our website or on the mobile app and check the traveler information map before you go. I would highly suggest that during this event, because it's going to give you those areas that we're seeing backups, delays, and those sorts of things. And if you need more information, you can visit these websites.
Okay, well, great. Thanks, Chris. You want to stop sharing? Let's go ahead and take some questions from our group. If you just joined us, my name is Don Ficken. I'm with the Missouri Solar Eclipse Task Force. Our leader, Trish Ersfeld, is in session today, I think in Jeff City, so she's not able to join us. Chris just provided us a nice program or presentation on the upcoming traffic. So let's go ahead and take questions from the group here. If you have any questions, you should be able to just talk if you'd like to. I've been muted, allowed everybody to unmute themselves. So just go ahead and raise any questions that you guys for Chris.
Hey, Chris, this is Stephen Fouts over at Division of Tourism. Thanks so much for your information. I noted there at the end you had a slide about staying up to date with MoDOT on their social media channels. Will there be anything kind of, for lack of a better term, real time that's available to see traffic-wise on the MoDOT app that you know of? And that may not be a fair question. I know you don't run the app. So
well, I think the closest thing we can do to real time is our traveler information map. We do try to update that as close as possible to real time. So we'll be working with our staff throughout the district to get that information to our customer service department so that they can update the map. And that's why I highly encourage anybody that's going to be traveling that weekend to get on there before they go. Also, we do have those CCTV cameras that are available to the public, so the public can even jump on our traveler information map and pick the cameras themselves, and that live streams the intersections at where we do have those cameras available throughout the district. And there is one at Perryville, so if you're curious if Perryville is the intersection there at I-55 and 51 is backed up, you could jump on that camera and be able to get a good idea of what's going on. And then also our customer service department is always a good resource to be able to call in that 188 Ask MoDOT, and they can get you any information you're needing.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Eugene Vale, you have a question?
Well, I just had a couple things. One is we were talking about the permits. We've heard from a friend of ours that works for Federal Express that they're suspending operations on that day because they're expecting the traffic problems. And other than that, I don't really have anything except that the St. Clair took 2 hours to clear after the 2017 eclipse sitting right there on I-44. So I like likewise, it's like unless you might want to find it more comfortable to sit somewhere than in your car with the motor running for 2 hours.
Yeah. And that's a great point. Anybody that calls in, I basically tell them the same thing, is that if you can find a restaurant that's not crowded, or even pack a lunch for that day and just sit and enjoy the weather, or the rest of the day versus sitting in traffic, would be a whole lot better and a lot
I'm
safer.
telling people an after eclipse picnic is a really good idea.
Yep. Well, thank you for promoting that.
And we also have a lot to see in our state, obviously. So it's
Right.
good to kind of hang around and take in the sights of the area that you're in, which you may not visit really that often. So do we have any other questions from our task force here? We're going to go ahead and wrap it up here pretty soon, unless there's some other questions. Well, Chris, that's really helpful. Actually, I forgot about some of the stuff with communication systems and things like that. So that's really great to bring it up. Sounds like you guys are prepared. We hope we have good weather. Everybody arrives early and stays late.
Yeah.
We have a great event here. So